Diagnostic lab submissions, filling out the forms. Though filling out the paperwork may seem like the easiest part of diagnostic lab submissions, it is often where the most mistakes are made. You can find many resources on Iowa State's Veterinary Diagnostic Lab website to help you in this process. Access this website by entering the Iowa State University College of Veterinary Medicine website and clicking the tab labeled Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory. On the page you can find more information on new tests, links to their specific laboratories, and contact information. Under the User Guide, you'll find detailed information on submissions guidelines, such as guidelines for submitting to departments such as bacteriology, molecular viral, pathology, serology, toxicology, and nutrition. You can also find much more detailed information on any given test. Under the tab labeled Tests and Fees, $, you can see the cost of each test performed. You can also see the vast number of options there are for tests that can be run, which emphasizes the importance of being specific in which tests you want them to run and sending in the correct samples. Going back, clicking the Forms tab will take you to the different forms. You will most likely be using the diagnostic and serum submission forms unless you are testing for something more specific. One thing that greatly helps the diagnostic lab to give you speedy and accurate results is to fill out the form on your computer to make it more legible. You can even become part of their program to send in the forms online by contacting the D-Lab. You can also receive your results online by filling out this form. It is important to include as much information as possible on your forms. In this section, fill out information about the veterinarian and your clinic, and in this section, fill out information about the owner, expected PERS status, result preferences, and flu surveillance option. The history is very useful to diagnosticians and it is important to fill out as much information as possible. Many people do not include the species, and if you're only sending in a small amount of tissue, it is often impossible for the diagnosticians to guess. Age is also extremely helpful. Pathogens that affect a young animal can be completely different than pathogens affecting an older animal, and so having the age of an animal really puts into focus what the differential diagnosis could be. You should also definitely include number at risk, because if they see that it is a large population, they can make the case a priority. Number sick and number dead can be useful in narrowing down the disease and which stage of the disease is in. The percent affected can help them to decide if it is a bacterial or viral disease. Marking the environment that the animal is living in is also important. For clinical signs, it is most useful if you could include a concise statement of the animal's symptoms and length of the symptoms. Including the animal's vaccination and treatments can explain antibodies or other results found. Including the date or time of death also explains a lot of what diagnosticians can find. If they see that the animal has been dead for a while before tissues were collected, they will not bother sending in intestinal samples because they know that it will not provide any results, which will save you money. Under the number of animals sampled section, you can detail how many animals you submitted and if you'd like those samples pooled together and tested as one or tested individually. The default, if you don't check either, is to pool the results when appropriate. If you want individual animals tested for whatever reason, you need to check that box. This section is for describing whole bodies submitted. This next section, examinations requested, is very important to fill out. You can either choose which test to run, or you can allow the diagnostician to choose which test will be run. Though this seems very easy to do and fill out, the majority of forms sent in are not filled out correctly, and they often receive forms like this with little to no information on it. These are pushed back until later in the day when they have time to call the veterinarian, which often slows the process and can add days until the veterinarian and client receive results. Another very common form that you should know how to fill out is the serology submissions form. In this area, you fill in your information, and in this area, you can fill in information about the owner. Don't forget to add the expected PERS status. Vaccination information can be extremely helpful. For example, it explains a lot of antibodies present in the serum. In these areas, you can choose which test you would like to run. And here, you can select if you would like the samples pooled or tested individually. Here, you can fill out if you're participating in the influenza surveillance program. Next, you fill out information about the individual tubes. You should pour off the serum into Falcom snap cap tubes and label them sequentially from 1 to however many samples you have. You may then designate which numbers correspond to which animal IDs on the form. If you don't label your tubes like this, you make a lot more work for the lab and slow down the process. You may add however many pages necessary for however many samples you have. Another thing to keep in mind is that it is important to update your forms. Some clinics are still sending in forms from 20 years ago or more, such as this example. Obviously, over the course of 20 years, pathogens and tests change. It is beneficial to put your form in a plastic bag so it doesn't get spilled on in the shipping process. If the form gets wet, it becomes illegible and useless. You should also put your form so that it is clear which case the form belongs to. Often veterinarians will send in multiple cases together, and you must differentiate between different cases. Remember, if you have any questions, call the D-Lab. They are happy to help you. Their contact information is listed here. Keep in mind to fill out as much as you can when filling out forms, and if you want something specific run, write that down somewhere on the sheet. Diagnosticians are not mind readers, so you need to make known what you want to find from the samples you sent in. Thank you for watching part 2 of this module.